We are joined by former Air Force pilot Guy Perrin. Guy, thank you very much for being here.
Good morning, Ariel.
That it has been a staple of Israeli military doctrine to rely first and foremost on the Air Force, on pilots such as yourself, for carrying out Israel's necessary deterrence as well as strike capabilities. Since we just were talking about the northern border, I want to focus there because this seems to be what the biggest concern of the military at this exact moment is. Ultimately, what are the capabilities in the north that the Air Force has, and what would be the prime targets that you'd be looking for?
Well, I think that everybody knows, certainly Hezbollah, Nasrallah, that the Israeli Air Force is capable of taking Lebanon to the Stone Age, as far as, you know, we use this term in the sense of actually destroying all the infrastructure of Lebanon. We've seen that before, you know, in previous years, as far as the airports, the major infrastructure. The question is not about capability. That's obviously there. The issue right now is that not only because of the U.S. demand not to do any preemptive strike, but also because of the logic that Israel would prefer to delay or eliminate altogether a second front as far as possible. Now, obviously, over the last few days, we see this escalation. We were hoping that Hezbollah was going to do the minimum necessary to say, okay, we're helping, but only you know, here and there a rocket. But over the last few days, it's obviously escalating, and the risk of that is that it goes out of hand. In other words, if this is what they're doing right now, we can imagine when the troops go into Gaza, with images coming out of there, and the Iranians, having said what we've just said, heard them saying that once IDF goes into Gaza, no control, the Air Force and the rest of the IDF is preparing for a full-scale operation in the north as well.
How much of Israel's capabilities will be lost if Israel does not preempt Hezbollah?
Well, that's a very good question. We all know that the Hezbollah, unlike Hamas, has many more rockets, and many more of them are precise. I mean, what we see in the last few days about these alarms and rockets launched even last night in Tel Aviv, we know that 99% of them are either intercepted or fall in open areas. In other words, they're not accurate. It's a different story in the north. So they're able, we know, they're aimed at Israeli airports, they're aimed at even the center of the army, etc. However, having said that, it doesn't mean that Israel has nothing in reply to that sort of attack. So I know that Hezbollah is hesitating, even from a pure military. I'm not talking about the general cause. It's not like they push a button and they paralyze Israel. This is not the case.
And that response is largely where you guys come in the Air Force, because this is what's talked about in the military as attrition rate, as the attrition of enemy equipment, the ability of you guys to strike and eliminate it as they fire it. How fast would you be able to attrition as the Air Force Hezbollah's 150,000 rockets?
Well, this is something that the Air Force has been preparing for years. It's been, to a certain extent, tried and seen before. The capabilities in the 2006, and then after that, the capability to pinpoint locations of missile launches and being able to strike there. If you noticed, President Biden said that their contribution will be in the qualitative capabilities or military, not only in the quantities. In other words, resupply Iron Dome and other weapons that we have already is one thing, which is necessary after so many days of fighting and many more ahead, but maybe. However, he said qualitative. And this is something that we know that there are still some military technologies, certain types of bombs, certain types of weapons that the Americans have not shared with the rest, and which will be coming to Israel. And so part of the answer to that is that $14 billion, it's not going to be necessarily in terms of a wire transfer to be used by Israel in any which way. It will be in terms of equipment, and some of it special. Everybody knows that Hamas, to a large extent, is hiding in tunnels underneath Gaza to reach and to be able to tackle this type of infrastructure. Certain bombs and certain technologies do exist, and I'm hoping that they will be coming to Israel and enable the Air Force, among others, to do things that were not possible to do before.
Guy, we're talking about this preparation for Gaza, and we were talking about the necessary preconditions of the air bombardment, but ultimately we still know, as far as the IDF is concerned, that a ground operation will be necessary. Let's talk about what the limits of the Air Force's capabilities have been so far and in previous military operations in Gaza that will necessitate ground operations.
Right. I think that it's well known that any kind of air operations, bombardment, have a very limited efficiency in terms of hitting definitely underground presence in tunnels and bunkers, not only from the point of view of their ability to penetrate there, but also from the ability to pinpoint the exact location. These guys have been working there for years. We have some intelligence, but the ability of the Air Force to pinpoint a location where an entry to a tunnel where they are currently hiding is very limited. And so if the goal is announced as eliminating Hamas, that cannot be done without people actually doing the groundwork, unfortunately, because this is something that no matter how much we prepare ourselves and how much air bombardment preparation is done, it cannot be done without cost.
So I guess ultimately, when the ground operation finally starts, what are Israel's key objectives going to be when it comes down to keeping Israeli troops safe from all the ambushes and nasty surprises that Hamas is going to have?
Well, it's gonna entail moving carefully. It's going to entail moving with large enough forces to be able to cover for each other. In other words, doing something that if a force is going into a specific dangerous area, there will be other coverage of not only ground forces. You're going to be seeing attack helicopters there. You're going to be seeing different kind of technologies to minimize the exposure of the ground forces. And I believe that, and this is maybe the reason for some of this additional time necessary, you're going to be seeing some kind of maneuvers that are surprised. It's not just going to be lines of tanks and infantry moving through the main cities. There's going to be things that are happening from behind, and I don't need to get into details, but it's going to be, we're preparing some surprises for these guys for sure.
Absolutely. During this ground operation, the Air Force is going to have somewhat less operational freedom because you're going to be operating with friendlies in the area as well. What sort of role will you guys be switching to during that time?
Well, exactly that. It's going to be much less of a general area bombardment. I mean, there's going to be, because we are going to know, the Air Force knows where our ground forces are going to be. They're not going to be everywhere. So the Air Force is still going to be busy guarding and hitting targets that are outside of the zone where the military, where the infantry is, on one hand, and second, and this is pretty precise. I mean, you can imagine that attack helicopters are working hand in hand with the platoon commander and battalion commander, knowing which corner of a building not to hit right now, and where, on the other hand, where they're getting objection and asking for air support to hit a specific building once they see that something comes out from that building. So there is going to be less of a general type involvement of the Air Force in terms of large area bombardment, and more of the precise types. And the precise types would be helicopters, but not only. There's going to be precise missiles that are going to go into buildings where the ground forces ask the Air Force to hit, etc.
More to the Israeli spirit. You were part of organizing many of the protests, and we saw after this, reservists said, doesn't matter what we said before, we're all coming together for this. Talk about the spirit of the Israeli people that you've seen in this.
Absolutely. I mean, since the hours of this attack, I'm part of the leaders of the protest movement. Everything has been put aside. There isn't a single demonstration or activity. All of our people are active and busy in support of the South, both military and civil. And in many cases, we're doing it instead of the government that was supposed to be there.
And it's a very, very concerning thing for Israelis to see that it has to be us and not the people that were supposed to protect us. Guy, thank you very much for analysis of the tactical side as well as the Israeli people.